Hello, my fellow students. My name is James. I would use this book called Miss Nelson is Missing. I would use it as a story time, either in a classroom or in a library setting. And it's for ages 7, which is the 2nd grade. And it teaches us that you better be nice to your teacher or she may never come back. Miss Nelson is missing. There, she's gone. See? The kids in room 207 were misbehaving again. Spitballs stuck into the ceiling. Paper planes whizzed through the air. They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. "Now settle down," said Miss Nelson in a sweet voice. But the class would not settle down. They whispered and giggled. They squirmed and made faces. They were even rude during story time. See, they're standing on their heads. And they always refuse to do their lessons. Sometimes something will have to be done, said Miss Nelson. And what do you think needs to be done? The next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. "Wow," yelled the kids. "Now we can really act up." They began to make more spitballs and paper planes. "Today it's terrible," they said. "Not so fast," hissed an unpleasant voice. A woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. "I am your teacher, Miss Viola Swamp." And she rapped the desk with her ruler. "Where is Miss Nelson?" asked the kid. "Never mind that," snapped Miss Swamp. "Open those arithmetic books." Mrs. Nelson's kids did as they were told. They could see that Miss Swamp was a real witch. She meant business. Right away, she put them to work, and she loaded them down with homework. "You'll have no story today," said Miss Swamp. "Keep your mouth shut," said Miss Swamp. "Sit perfectly still," said Miss Swamp. "And if you misbehave, you'll be sorry." The kids in room 207 had never worked so hard. Days went by and there was no sign of Miss Nelson. The kids missed Miss Nelson. "Maybe we should try to find her," they said. Some of them went to the police. Detective McSmog was assigned to the case. He listened to their story. He scratched his chin. He said, "I think Miss Nelson is missing." Detective McSmog would not be much help. Others went to Mrs. Nelson's house. The shades were drawn tightly, and no one answered the door. In fact, the only person they see was the wicked Miss Viola Swamp coming down the street. "If she sees us," said one of them, "she'll give us more homework." And they all got away just in time. Maybe something terrible happened to Miss Nelson. Maybe she was gobbled up by a shark. And one of the kids, but that didn't seem likely. "Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars," said another kid. But that didn't seem likely either. "I know," explained one. Maybe Miss Nelson car was carried off by a swarm of angry butterflies. But that made no sense at all. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. It seemed that Miss Nelson would never come back, and they would be stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard footsteps in the hall. "Here comes the witch," they whispered. "Hello, children," someone said in a sweet voice. It was Miss Nelson. "Did you miss me?" she asked. "We certainly did," cried all the kids. "Where were you?" "That's my little secret," said Miss Nelson. "How about a story time?" "Oh, yes," cried the kids. Miss Nelson noticed that during story time no one was rude or silly. "What brought you to this lovely change?"